When Nalnish approached Cochise with their proposal, the Apache leader's initial reaction was skeptical. The idea of creating a cultural bridge at Maria's trading post seemed naive at best, dangerous at worst. But as Nalnish explained their vision in detail, something shifted in the older warrior's expression. "You speak of teaching Apache ways to mixed-blood children," Cochise said slowly. "But what of teaching white people about Apache ways? What of showing them we are more than the savage raiders they believe us to be?" "That too," Nalnish confirmed. "My daughter heals with plants her Apache grandmother taught her mother. But she also reads medical books written by white doctors. Why cannot both ways strengthen each other?" The discussion continued for hours with other Apache warriors joining the debate. Some were adamantly opposed. They had seen too much betrayal and broken promises from white people to trust any cooperation. But others, particularly those with mixed-blood relatives or children, began to see possibilities in the proposal. The breakthrough came when old medicine woman Naiche arrived unexpectedly at the trading post. She was Cochise's grandmother, a revered healer who rarely left the reservation. Her presence immediately commanded everyone's respect and attention. Naiche said nothing at first. She simply walked to where Ayana was sitting quietly beside Maria, watching the adult conversations with worried eyes. The elderly Apache woman studied the child's face for a long moment, then began speaking in Apache. "She asks if you remember the healing song your mother taught you," Nalnish translated. Ayana glanced nervously at all the adults watching her, then nodded. In a voice barely above a whisper, she began to sing the haunting melody that had become so familiar at the trading post. But as she sang, something remarkable happened. Naiche joined her, her weathered voice blending with the child's clear tones. Soon Desba was humming along, then Nalnish, then other Apache voices adding harmony to the ancient song. When the song ended, Naiche spoke again, this time in English that was heavily accented but clear. "This child carries the healing spirit. Apache blood, white blood, does not matter. The plants know her. The spirits know her. She will heal many people if she is allowed to grow in both worlds." She turned to face Cochise directly. "My grandson, we have lost so many of our ways already. Our children are forced into white schools where they are beaten for speaking Apache. Our ceremonies are forbidden. Our healing knowledge dies with each elder who passes. But here," she gestured toward the trading post, "here our ways could live alongside white ways. Children could learn both. Is this not better than losing everything?" Cochise was quiet for a long time, clearly wrestling with the decision. Finally, he spoke to Nalnish. "If we agree to this, there will be conditions. Apache children who come here must still learn Apache ways first. They must know who they are before they learn to live in the white world. And you must promise that this place will always welcome Apache people, will always be a refuge for those who need healing or help." "Agreed," Nalnish said immediately. "And," Cochise continued, looking directly at Maria, "the white woman must prove she truly understands what she is taking on. This will not be easy. There will be those on both sides who oppose what you do here. Are you prepared for that?" Maria looked at Ayana, who was watching her with hopeful, trusting eyes. She thought of her sister Sarah, who had found love and belonging among the Apache. She thought of all the mixed-blood children like Ayana, who were caught between worlds, and all the pure-blood children from both cultures who could benefit from understanding each other. "I am prepared," she said firmly. The transformation of the trading post began immediately. Word spread quickly through both Apache and white communities about the unusual school that was taking shape. The reactions were mixed and often hostile, but gradually, cautiously, people began to come. The first Apache student besides Ayana was a 10-year-old boy named Little Wolf, whose mother had died and whose father wanted him to learn English and arithmetic while still maintaining his Apache identity. The first white student was the daughter of a neighboring rancher who had heard about Ayana's remarkable healing abilities and wanted her own daughter to learn about medicinal plants. Though days became a careful balance of different traditions and teaching methods. Mornings often began with Apache ceremonies and stories, taught by Desba and visiting elders. Afternoons might focus on reading, writing, and arithmetic, with Maria using whatever books and materials she could acquire. Evenings were for practical skills, both Apache and white methods of cooking, crafting, healing, and surviving in the harsh desert environment. Ayana thrived in this environment like never before. No longer caught between worlds, she became a bridge herself, equally comfortable explaining Apache plant lore to white children and teaching white healing methods to Apache youth. Her bilingual abilities made her invaluable as a translator, and her natural teaching instincts emerged as she helped younger children navigate the complex curriculum. The real validation came 6 months later when Mrs. Patterson returned to the trading post with her healthy toddler and a specific request. Her son had been having nightmares and seemed unusually anxious. The local doctor had no solutions to offer. "I know it might sound strange," she said hesitantly to Maria, "but I was wondering if that little Apache girl, if Ayanna, might be able to help. What she did for my baby when he was sick, it was like a miracle." Ayanna, now 8 years old and much more confident, listened carefully to Mrs. Patterson's description of her son's symptoms. After thinking it over, she suggested a combination of Apache and white healing methods, a tea made from chamomile and passion flower, which Maria had taught her about, combined with a traditional Apache smudging ceremony to cleanse negative energy from the child's sleeping space. The treatment worked perfectly. Within a week, the boy was sleeping peacefully again. More importantly, Mrs. Patterson went home and told her neighbors about the remarkable healing she had witnessed. Word began to spread that the Trading Post School wasn't just teaching children, it was developing new and better ways to help people. Not everyone was supportive. There were still those in both communities who viewed the cultural mixing with suspicion or outright hostility. Anonymous threats were left at the trading post. Some Apache traditionalists accused Nalnish of betraying his heritage, while some white settlers accused Maria of endangering their community by encouraging Apache presence. But for every critic, there seemed to be two supporters. Parents began bringing children from farther and farther away. Apache elders started making regular visits to share traditional knowledge. White doctors and teachers began stopping by to observe the innovative teaching methods and healing practices. The most satisfying moment came on Ayanna's 9th birthday, when she stood before a gathering of Apache elders, white settlers, and mixed-blood children from throughout the territory. She'd been asked to demonstrate what she had learned over the past 2 years. Instead of showing off her reading skills or her plant knowledge, Ayanna chose to sing. She sang the healing song her mother had taught her, but she had added new verses, words that spoke of bringing different peoples together, of healing not just bodies but communities, of building bridges instead of walls. When she finished, there wasn't a dry eye in the gathering. Old medicine woman Naiche stood up slowly and spoke in Apache, then translated her own words into English. "This child has become what her mother dreamed she would be," she said. "A healer who can work in both worlds, a teacher who can help others find their way. The spirits are well pleased." As the celebration continued into the evening, Maria found herself standing apart for a moment, watching the remarkable scene. Apache and white children played games together while their parents shared food and stories. Nalnish was deep in conversation with a white rancher about water rights, finding common ground that might have seemed impossible a few years earlier. Desbo was teaching a group of fascinated white women the intricate art of basket weaving. And at the center of it all was Ayanna, no longer the frightened, withdrawn child who had arrived 2 years ago, but a confident, bilingual, bicultural young woman who moved easily between groups, translating not just languages but entire worldviews. "She's remarkable," said a voice behind Maria. She turned to find Dr. William Hayes, a physician from the territorial capital who had come to observe their healing methods. "That child has gifts I've never seen before."
Have you thought about what will happen as she gets older?
"Her abilities could take her anywhere." Maria smiled, watching as Ayanna carefully bandaged a scraped knee for one of the younger children, explaining her treatment in both Apache and English. "She'll go wherever she chooses," Maria said confidently. "But I have a feeling she'll always come back here. This is where she learned that being caught between two worlds doesn't have to be a burden. It can be a gift." This is where she discovered that bridges are built by people brave enough to stand in the middle and hold both sides together, as if sensing their conversation. Ayanna looked up and waved at Maria with a brilliant smile. In that moment, Maria could see not just the healthy, happy child she had become, but glimpses of the extraordinary woman she would grow into. A healer, a teacher, a bridge builder who would spend her life helping. The discovery of their family connection transformed the dynamics at the trading post in ways both wonderful and challenging. Ayana blossomed with the security of knowing she truly belonged. But she also began testing boundaries in ways that were completely normal for a child who finally felt safe enough to assert herself. "I don't want to practice reading today," she announced one morning, crossing her arms defiantly. "I want to go hunting with Papa instead." Maria hid a smile. This was actually a good sign. Ayana was finally comfortable enough to express her own desires instead of simply trying to please everyone around her. But it also meant they needed to establish some structure. "Reading is important," Maria said calmly, "but so is learning Apache skills. How about we do both? Read for an hour, then you can spend the afternoon with your father." Ayana considered this compromise, then nodded grudgingly. "Can I read about hunting? Or tracking? If we can find books about those things, absolutely." This negotiation set the pattern for the weeks that followed. Ayana was eager to learn everything, but she wanted to learn it all at once. She pestered Desba to teach her more complex beadwork, begged Nalnish to show her how to use a bow, and demanded that Maria explain every healing technique she knew. "Patience, little one," Desba counseled during one of Ayana's more demanding moments. "Wisdom comes slowly, like the sunrise. You cannot make the sun rise faster by demanding it." But Ayana's enthusiasm, even when overwhelming, was infectious. The trading post had become a vibrant center of learning and activity. Maria found herself researching topics she had never considered before, trying to answer Ayana's endless questions. Nalnish began teaching her practical skills like tracking, fire making, and basic survival techniques. Desba worked with her on traditional Apache crafts and stories. The real test came when word spread through the territory about the unusual arrangement at Maria's trading post. Not everyone approved of a white woman raising an Apache child, or of Apache adults living peacefully among white settlers. The criticism came from both sides, creating tension that even Ayana began to notice. "Mrs. Henderson says you're making a mistake," Ayana reported one day after a visit to the nearby settlement. "She says Apache children can't be trusted, that I'll turn wild and dangerous when I get older." Maria felt her protective instincts flare, but she kept her voice steady. "What do you think about what Mrs. Henderson said?" Ayana was quiet for a moment, considering. "I think she's scared of things she doesn't understand. Like those soldiers were scared of me. That's very wise." "How does it make you feel?" "Sad and angry. But also," Ayana paused, searching for words, "also sorry for her. She doesn't know how wonderful Papa and Aunt Desba are. She doesn't know that Apache people can be just as kind and smart and funny as white people." Maria marveled at the child's mature response. The frightened, withdrawn little girl who had arrived months ago was growing into someone with remarkable emotional intelligence and resilience. But not all the challenges came from outsiders. The hardest moment came when a group of Apache warriors arrived at the trading post, led by a stern-faced man named Cochise. They had come to speak with Nalnish about returning to the reservation, where all Apache were supposed to be living under government supervision. Ayana hid behind Maria as the warriors dismounted, their presence clearly triggering memories of the soldiers who had frightened her. But as she listened to their conversation with her father, conducted in rapid Apache, her expression shifted from fear to confusion to distress. "They want Papa to come back," she whispered to Maria. "They say he's forgotten his duty to the people by staying here with white woman." The debate went on for hours. Cochise argued that Nalnish's place was with his tribe, helping to protect and guide the younger warriors. The Apache needed experienced fighters and hunters, especially as conditions on the reservation grew more difficult. Staying at the trading post, he claimed, was selfish and would set a bad example for others. Nalnish listened respectfully but stood his ground. His daughter's healing and education were his priority now, he explained. She had been severely traumatized and was just beginning to recover. Moving her again, especially to the harsh environment of the reservation, could undo all the progress she had made. "The child is half white anyway," one of the younger warriors said dismissively. "Perhaps she belongs with white people." The temperature of the conversation dropped noticeably. Nalnish's voice when he responded carried a warning that made everyone pay attention. "She is my daughter," he said quietly. "She carries her mother's Apache blood and her mother's Apache heart. Any man who questions her belonging among us will answer to me." But Ayana had heard the dismissive comment and it cut her deeply. That evening she came to Maria in tears. "They don't want me either," she sobbed. The white people think I'm too Apache and the Apache think I'm too white. Where do I belong? Maria held the crying child, her heart breaking for the impossible position Ayanna found herself in. This was the central challenge of her existence, being caught between two worlds that seemed determined to reject anyone who didn't fit neatly into their definitions. You belong with the people who love you, Maria said firmly. You belong with your father, with me, with Aunt Desba. You belong wherever you choose to make your home. But what about when I grow up? What about when I want to get married and have children?
Who will accept me?
These were deep questions for a 7-year-old to be grappling with. But Ayanna's experiences had forced her to think about identity and belonging in ways most children never had to consider. The right person will accept all of you, Maria assured her. Someone who sees your Apache strength and your white determination, your healing gifts and your warrior spirit, and loves you for all of it. The crisis deepened when Cochise made a formal demand the next morning. Nalnish could choose to return to the reservation with his daughter, or he could stay with the white woman, but he could not remain Apache while living outside tribal authority. The ultimatum was harsh but not unexpected. The Apache were under enormous pressure from the government, and unity was seen as essential for survival. Nalnish asked for time to consider, and Cochise granted him 3 days before expecting an answer. Those 3 days were among the most difficult any of them had experienced. The weight of the decision affected everyone. Ayanna became withdrawn again, clearly blaming herself for her father's impossible choice. Desba spent hours in quiet conversation with her brother, speaking in Apache too rapid for Maria to follow, and Nalnish himself seemed to age years in those few days. I cannot ask you to give up your people for us, Maria told him on the second night. That wouldn't be fair to you or to Ayanna. And I cannot take her back to that life now, Nalnish replied. Not when she is just learning to trust the world again. The reservation is no place for a child like her. Too much anger, too much despair. The solution, when it came, was as unexpected as it was perfect. It was Ayanna herself who proposed it, with the startling clarity that children sometimes bring to complex problems. Why can't we be Apache here? She asked simply. Why can't we bring Apache ways to this place instead of taking me to Apache place? Her suggestion sparked a longer conversation that lasted deep into the night. What if they created something new? A place where Apache traditions could be practiced and preserved, but where children like Ayanna could also learn to navigate the white world. What if the trading post became a bridge between the two cultures instead of a place of exile from one? By morning, they had the outline of a plan that would challenge everything, but might just work. The revelation came on a warm morning in late summer, when Maria was helping Ayanna practice reading from an old medical book. The child had shown an amazing aptitude for learning, absorbing both written English and Apache traditions with equal enthusiasm. As they worked through a passage about herbal remedies, Ayanna suddenly stopped and pointed to an illustration of a woman gathering plants. She looks like Mama, Ayanna said softly. Same hair, same dress. Maria glanced at the picture, a simple drawing of a pioneer woman in a typical calico dress and bonnet. Many women dressed like that on the frontier, little one. But something in Ayanna's expression made Maria look more closely. The child was studying the image with an intensity that went beyond casual observation. Mama showed me a picture once, Ayanna whispered, before she got too sick to remember things clearly. She said it was her first family before the Apache found her. There was a woman in a dress just like this one. Maria felt her heart skip a beat. Over the months, she had pieced together more details about Sarah's background, but Nalnish knew very little about his wife's life before she was taken by the Apache. The trauma of her capture had apparently blocked many of her early memories. Do you remember anything else about the picture? Maria asked gently. Ayanna screwed up her face in concentration. There were people standing by a wagon, and Mama said, she said there was a place called... She paused, clearly struggling with a half-remembered word. Santo something. She said that was where her first family was going. Maria's blood ran cold. Santa Fe. Her own parents had been part of a wagon train heading to Santa Fe 25 years ago. She had been 16 then, traveling with her parents and her younger sister to start a new life in New Mexico territory. But their wagon train had been attacked by Apache raiders during the worst years of the conflicts. Her parents had been killed and her sister Sarah, had been taken. Maria's hands began to shake as the full implications hit her. She stared at Ayana's face with new eyes, the green eyes that ran in her own family, the shape of her nose that was identical to Maria's sister, even the way she tilted her head when she was thinking hard about something. "Ayana," Maria said, her voice barely steady. "What was your mother's name before she became Apache?" "Her first name from when she was very little?" The child looked puzzled by the sudden intensity in Maria's voice. I don't remember. She never talked about it much. It made her sad. Maria needed to be sure before she said anything that might upset the child or create false hope. But her heart was pounding with a certainty that grew stronger with each passing moment. Sarah. Her sister's name had been Sarah, and she would have been exactly the right age when the Apache attack happened. That evening, after Ayana had gone to bed, Maria approached Nalnish where he sat on the porch cleaning his rifle. Her hands were still trembling slightly as she sat down beside him. "I need to ask you some questions about your wife," she said quietly. "About her past." Nalnish looked up, immediately alert to the strain in her voice. "What troubles you? When Sarah was taken as a child, do you know anything about the wagon train she was traveling with? Where they were going? Who else was with her?" "Very little," Nalnish admitted. The memories caused her pain, so she rarely spoke of that time. "I know she had family, parents, maybe a sibling, but they were killed in the attack." "Why do you ask these things?" Maria took a deep breath. "Because I believe Sarah might have been my sister." The words hung in the desert air like a challenge to reality itself. Nalnish set down his rifle and turned to face her fully, his dark eyes searching her face. "Your sister? 25 years ago, my family was traveling to Santa Fe in a wagon train. We were attacked by Apache raiders. My parents were killed and my little sister Sarah was taken. She was 6 years old, had light brown hair and green eyes. I never knew what happened to her." Nalnish was quiet for a long time, processing this information. Finally he spoke. "Sarah said once that she sometimes dreamed of an older sister who sang to her. She could never remember the songs, but she said they were beautiful and made her feel safe." Maria felt tears start to flow. She had sung to little Sarah every night when they were children. Lullabies their mother had taught them. Folk songs she had learned from other travelers. The confirmation hit her like a physical blow. "Then Ayana is," she whispered. "Your blood," Nalnish finished. "Your sister's daughter. Your family." They sat in stunned silence as the full meaning of this discovery settled over them. All this time, while Maria had been helping heal Ayana's trauma, the child had actually been healing Maria's own long-buried grief over her lost sister. The connection she had felt to the little girl, the fierce protective love that had grown so quickly, it all made sense now. "Does this change things?" Nalnish asked quietly. "What you feel for her, what you want for her future?" "It changes everything," Maria said. "And it changes nothing." She tried to explain the contradiction she felt. "I loved her before I knew she was family. I wanted to help her heal, to keep her safe, to watch her grow into the remarkable woman she's destined to become. None of that changes. But now," she paused, wiping her eyes, "now I understand why my heart recognized her from the moment you brought her here." "What do we tell her?" Nalnish asked. "The truth, but carefully. She's been dealing with so much confusion about her identity, about belonging to two worlds. This might help her understand that sometimes the two worlds can come together in beautiful ways." The next morning, Maria found Ayana in the garden, singing softly to the plants as she watered them. The sight filled Maria with bittersweet joy, her sister's daughter carrying on the healing traditions that Sarah had learned from both her worlds. "Ayana," Maria called softly. "Could you come sit with me? I have something important to tell you." The child immediately tensed, the old wariness flickering in her eyes. "Am I in trouble?" "No, sweet girl. Nothing like that. But I learned something yesterday about your mother, about her first family before she became Apache." They sat together on the porch steps, where they had shared so many conversations. Maria chose her words carefully, watching Ayana's face for signs of distress. "I think your mother was my sister, my little sister Sarah, who was taken many years ago." Ayana stared at her with wide eyes, trying to process this information. "Your sister?" "When she was 6 years old, the same age you are now when you came to me. She had green eyes like yours and hair that caught the sun the same way. And I think that's why you felt safe with me so quickly, because part of you recognized family." Ayana was quiet for a long time, her small face serious as she worked through the implications. If Mama was your sister, then you're my... What are you to me? Your aunt, Maria said gently. Your family, just as much as your father and Desba are family. Suddenly, Ayana's face lit up with understanding and joy. That's why I felt like I belonged here. That's why working with you felt like coming home. She threw herself into Maria's arms with a force that nearly knocked them both over. For the first time since her arrival, Ayana hugged someone besides her father with complete uninhibited trust. Does this mean I can stay? She asked, her voice muffled against Maria's shoulder. Does this mean I really belong here? You belonged here from the moment your father brought you to my door, Maria assured her. Being family just makes it official. As they held each other, both of them crying happy tears, Maria caught sight of Nalnish watching from the doorway. The expression on the warrior's face was complex, joy at seeing his daughter so happy, but also something that looked like loss. Later that day, when Ayana was napping after the emotional morning, Maria approached him. You're worried about what this means, she observed. Nalnish nodded. She is my daughter, but she is also your blood family. In Apache tradition, the mother's family has strong claims, and you can give her things I cannot. Education in the white world, safety from those who would harm her for her Apache blood. And you can give her things I cannot, Maria countered. Connection to her mother's chosen people, knowledge of Apache traditions, understanding of her place in both worlds. She doesn't have to choose, Nalnish. We're all her family now. The relief on his face told her she had said exactly what he needed to hear. Over the next week, Ayana began to emerge from her shell like a flower slowly opening to the sun. The progress was fragile and uneven. Some days she would chatter softly to Maria while they worked in the garden. Other days she would retreat into herself and communicate only through nods and gestures. But each small step forward filled Maria's heart with hope. The child showed a remarkable intelligence and an intuitive understanding of the healing arts. She could identify plants by their scent, remembered everything Maria taught her about their properties, and had gentle hands that seemed to know exactly how to handle delicate seedlings. It became clear that her mother had indeed begun teaching her before illness claimed her life. She learns like her mother did, Nalnish observed one evening as they watched Ayana carefully transplanting young herbs into larger pots. Sarah had the same gift. She could make anything grow. Maria had learned more about Sarah during the long desert evenings when the family would sit on the porch sharing stories. The picture that emerged was of a remarkable woman who had not only survived being taken from one world into another, but had thrived and found love. Her death in childbirth had devastated not just Nalnish, but the entire extended family who had watched her grow from a frightened child into a respected healer and wise woman. Ayana has her mother's hands, Desba added in her careful English. She was making steady progress with the language, determined to communicate directly with Maria. Before the trouble, she would sing to plants like her mother did, made them grow stronger. She still hums sometimes when she thinks no one is listening, Maria had noticed. Always the same melody. Is it something her mother taught her? Nalnish nodded, his expression soft with memory. A healing song. Sarah learned it from the grandmother who raised her in our tribe. She said it helped the plants remember how to be strong. The mention of singing sparked an idea in Maria's mind. Music had always been important in her own family. Her husband had played guitar and they had filled their home with songs and laughter. If Ayana had this musical connection to healing, perhaps it could be part of her own recovery. The opportunity came the following afternoon, when they were working with a particularly stubborn patch of lavender. The plants looked healthy but hadn't bloomed, despite Maria's best efforts. Ayana stood studying them with the serious expression she brought to all her plant observations. Sometimes when plants are sad, they forget how to bloom, Maria said thoughtfully. I wonder if they need to remember their song. Ayana looked up at her with those startling green eyes. Plants have songs? I think so. Your father told me your mother knew healing songs. Maybe you could teach me. The child looked uncertain, glancing around to make sure her father was within sight. Nalnish was nearby working on repairing some leather tack, but he pretended to be absorbed in his task while clearly listening to every word. It's been so long, Ayana whispered. What if I don't remember it right? Then the plants will teach us, Maria said gently. They're good teachers, very patient. Slowly, hesitantly, Ayana began to hum. The melody was haunting and beautiful, with a rhythm that seemed to match the heartbeat of the earth itself. As she gained confidence, her voice grew stronger, and Maria found herself humming along, learning the ancient tune. Something magical happened as they sang to the lavender. Whether it was coincidence or something deeper, the plants seemed to respond. Their stems straightened slightly, their leaves grew more vibrant, and by the end of the week the first purple buds had appeared. "You see," Maria told the delighted child, "they were just waiting for the right song." This success opened new doors in Ayana's healing. She began to talk more freely about her memories of her mother, sharing stories of gathering herbs together, learning to prepare healing teas, and listening to the old stories of how plants came to help people. But she also began to speak about darker things, her confusion about being different from other Apache children, her mother's illness, and most difficultly, the encounter with the soldiers. "They looked at me like I was something bad," she told Maria one afternoon as they sat weaving baskets from willow branches. Her small fingers were surprisingly skilled at the intricate work. "One of them grabbed my face and said I had devil's eyes. He said children like me bring trouble to everyone." Maria felt anger surge through her at the cruelty shown to an innocent child, but she kept her voice calm and steady. "Some people are afraid of things they don't understand. But there is nothing bad about you, Ayana. Your eyes are beautiful like your mother's were." "But I am different," the child insisted. "I don't look like the other children in our band. Sometimes I dream in English words I don't even know I remember. And when I get scared, I want to run to white people for help. But white people are the ones who scare me most." The complexity of Ayana's situation became clearer to Maria with each revelation. The child wasn't just dealing with the trauma of her mother's death and the soldiers' harassment. She was struggling with fundamental questions about her own identity. In a world that seemed to demand she choose between being Apache or white, she felt she belonged fully to neither. "You know what I think?" Maria said, continuing to weave as she spoke. "I think being two things doesn't make you half of anything. It makes you double. You have twice as many gifts, twice as much to offer the world." Ayana considered this seriously. "My Aunt Desba says the same thing. But it's hard when other people don't see it that way." "The right people will see it," Maria assured her. "And those are the only opinions that matter." As the weeks passed, Ayana's nightmares became less frequent, though they didn't disappear entirely. She began to eat with more appetite, laugh at Maria's stories about the antics of her various animal visitors, and even play simple games. Most importantly, she began to trust her own instincts again. The turning point came when a neighbor, Mrs. Patterson, stopped by the trading post with her sick infant. The baby had been running a fever for days, and the nearest doctor was a 3-day ride away. Mrs. Patterson was desperate. Maria was examining the listless child when Ayana appeared at her elbow. Without being asked, she began gathering specific herbs, moving with the same focused purpose Maria had seen when she worked in the garden. "These for the fever," Ayana said quietly, holding up willow bark. "And this for the breathing," she added, showing dried eucalyptus leaves. "Mama showed me." Mrs. Patterson looked skeptical about taking medical advice from a half-Apache child, but her desperation overrode her prejudices. Maria prepared the tea exactly as Ayana instructed, and they gave it to the baby in small sips. Within hours, the fever had broken. By the next morning, the infant was nursing normally and showing signs of returning strength. Mrs. Patterson was so grateful she could barely speak. "That little girl saved my baby's life," she told Maria. I never would have thought. I mean, she's just a child and Apache. She's a healer," Maria said firmly, "just like her mother was." After Mrs. Patterson left with her healthy baby, Ayana sat very quietly on the porch steps. Maria found her there as the sun was setting, looking thoughtful. "You saved that baby today," Maria told her. "Your mother would be very proud." "I felt her with me," Ayana said softly. "When I was choosing the herbs. Like she was guiding my hands, I believe she was. And I think she guided your father to bring you here too." Ayana looked up at Maria with an expression that was older than her 7 years. "Are you going to keep me? Or will I have to leave when Papa thinks I'm better?" The question struck Maria like a physical blow. Somewhere along the way, without even realizing it, she had begun to think of this remarkable child as part of her life permanently. The thought of Ayana leaving filled her with unexpected grief. "What would you like?" Maria asked carefully. "I want to learn everything you can teach me," Ayana said earnestly. about healing, about plants, about making people better. But I also want to learn the Apache ways from Papa and Aunt Desba. Is that possible? Looking into those earnest green eyes, Maria knew that whatever challenges lay ahead, they would face them together. This child had already begun to heal her own heart in ways she hadn't expected. 4 days later, Maria stood on her porch watching the desert horizon with unusual nervousness. She had spent the time preparing one of her unused rooms, gathering herbs, and most importantly, examining her own heart about what lay ahead. The responsibility of helping a traumatized child felt enormous, especially one caught between two worlds that seemed determined to remain at war with each other. The dust cloud appeared first, then gradually resolved into 3 figures on horseback. Nalnish rode in front, leading a pack horse loaded with supplies. Behind him rode a woman who could only be his sister, and between them, so small she almost disappeared against the horse's back, sat a child. As they drew closer, Maria could see that Ayana was indeed striking in her mixed heritage. Her hair caught the sunlight with copper highlights, and even from a distance, her unusual green eyes were visible. But what struck Maria most was the child's posture, rigid, alert, like a small animal ready to flee at the first sign of danger. When they reached the trading post, Nalnish dismounted first, then helped his daughter down from the horse. The child immediately moved to stand behind her father, peering around his legs at Maria with those remarkable eyes. The woman who had ridden with them was clearly Nalnish's sister. They shared the same strong features and intelligent gaze. "This is my sister Desba," Nalnish said. "She has helped care for Ayana since her mother died." Desba nodded respectfully to Maria, but remained watchful, clearly protective of her niece. She spoke to Nalnish in rapid Apache, gesturing toward the buildings and then toward Maria. Though Maria could not understand the words, the tone was clear, concern mixed with desperate hope. Ayana remained silent throughout the introductions, clinging to her father's buckskin shirt. When Maria crouched down to the child's eye level, Ayana immediately retreated further behind Nalnish. "Hello, Ayana," Maria said softly. "Your father tells me you like to watch the birds. I have many birds here. Hawks, roadrunners, even an owl that comes at night." The child's eyes flickered with momentary interest before the shuttered look returned. She whispered something to her father in Apache. "She asks if you are going to ask her questions like the soldiers did," Nalnish translated, his voice tight with controlled anger at the memory. "No questions at all," Maria assured the child. "Not until you want to talk to me. Would you like to see where you'll be sleeping?" The next hour was spent settling the family into the spare rooms Maria had prepared. She had given Ayana the smallest room, thinking it might feel safer, and had placed a cot in the adjoining room for Desba. Nalnish would sleep in the main guest quarters. As they unpacked their belongings, Maria noticed the careful way they moved around Ayana, never startling her, always making sure she could see them. It was clear this family had learned to accommodate the child's trauma, but Maria could also see the toll it was taking on all of them. That evening, as they shared a simple meal on the porch, Maria observed the family dynamics more closely. Ayana ate mechanically without pleasure, and only when encouraged by her aunt. She kept her head down, occasionally glancing up to check the positions of the adults around her. When a coyote howled in the distance, she flinched violently and grabbed her father's arm. "The sounds frighten her now," Nalnish explained quietly. "She used to love the night sounds of the desert. Now everything makes her jump." Desba spoke in Apache again, and Nalnish nodded. "My sister says to tell you that Ayana has nightmares most nights. She wakes up crying, but she cannot say what she dreams about." Maria felt her heart breaking for this beautiful child who had been robbed of her sense of safety in the world. "Tomorrow we will start slowly. No pressure, no expectations. Just being together." That night Maria lay awake listening to the sounds from the other rooms. Sure enough, around midnight she heard Ayana crying out in her sleep, followed by Desba's gentle voice comforting her. The pattern repeated twice more before dawn. The next morning brought the first small breakthrough. Maria was in her garden, tending to her herbs and vegetables, when she noticed a small figure watching her from behind the corner of the house. Ayana stood perfectly still, observing Maria's movements with intense curiosity. "Good morning, little one," Maria said without looking directly at the child. She had learned that direct attention often sent Ayana fleeing. Instead, she continued her work, talking quietly to her plants as she often did when alone. These tomatoes are being stubborn today, she murmured to a particularly droopy plant. I think they need more water, but not too much. Plants are like people. They need just the right amount of care. She heard the soft whisper of bare feet on earth as Ayanna crept closer. Maria continued her one-sided conversation with the garden, gradually becoming aware that the child had moved within a few feet of her. The beans are doing better, Maria continued. They like to climb, you see, always reaching for the sun. Sometimes I think they have the right idea. When things get difficult, grow toward the light. From the corner of her eye, Maria saw Ayanna's hand reach out toward a low-hanging bean pod. The child touched it gently, then looked up at Maria with the first unguarded expression she had shown. They feel funny, don't they? Maria said softly, fuzzy and warm from the sun. Ayanna nodded slightly, then immediately looked alarmed at her own response. But before she could retreat, a roadrunner darted across the garden, chasing some unseen insect. The child's attention was immediately captured by the comical bird's antics. For the next few minutes, they stood together in comfortable silence, watching the roadrunner's hunt. When the bird finally disappeared into the sagebrush, Ayanna looked up at Maria with something approaching a smile. He comes every morning, Maria said. I call him Roberto because he's so serious about his work. Would you like to help me water the plants? Ayanna hesitated, then nodded. Maria handed her a small watering can, and together they moved through the garden. The child was careful and thorough, and Maria noticed how she seemed to relax as she focused on the task. When Nalnish appeared looking for his daughter, he found them both kneeling by the herb patch, Ayanna carefully sprinkling water on the oregano, while Maria showed her how to test the soil with her fingers. She is helping me, Maria explained simply, but the look of wonder and gratitude on the warrior's face spoke volumes. It was the first time since their arrival that Ayanna had willingly engaged with anything or anyone. As the day progressed, a pattern began to emerge. Ayanna would retreat to her father's side whenever other people appeared, when traders stopped by, when neighbors visited. But during the quiet moments when it was just Maria and the child, small connections began to form. The breakthrough came unexpectedly that afternoon. Maria was preparing herbs for drying when Ayanna appeared at her elbow, watching intently. Without thinking, Maria began explaining what she was doing. These are for healing, she said, bundling the herbs carefully. This one helps with headaches, this one helps people sleep peacefully. Ayanna studied the herbs with the intense focus Maria had noticed she brought to everything. Then, in a voice so soft it was barely audible, she spoke her first words to Maria. My mother knew plants, she whispered. Maria's hand stilled on the herbs, afraid to break the spell of this first communication. Did she teach you about them? Ayanna nodded. Before she got too sick. She said plants want to help people. They just need us to listen to them. Your mother was wise, Maria said gently. Would you like to help me listen to these plants? For the first time since her arrival, Ayanna smiled. A real smile that transformed her solemn little face. As they worked together in the herb-scented kitchen, Maria felt a deep certainty that this child's healing had truly begun. But she also sensed that the hardest part still lay ahead. The desert wind carried dust across the small trading post as Maria Santos swept the wooden porch for the third time that morning. She paused, shading her eyes with her weathered hand, watching a lone figure emerge from the heat shimmer on the horizon. The man walked with purpose, his long black hair tied back, wearing traditional Apache clothing mixed with practical frontier gear. A rifle hung across his shoulder, and something about his posture spoke of both strength and deep weariness. Maria had been running this remote outpost for 15 years, ever since her husband died in a mining accident. She'd seen all kinds of travelers pass through, prospectors, soldiers, traders, and occasionally Apache warriors. But this man was different. His eyes held a pain that went beyond physical exhaustion. The stranger approached slowly, his dark eyes scanning the modest buildings that made up the trading post. Maria noticed he favored his left leg slightly, and there were old scars visible on his arms. When he spoke, his English was careful but clear. I am called Nalnish, he said, using the Apache word that meant one who works. I seek the white woman who heals. Maria felt her heart skip. Word had spread across the territory about her unusual gift for healing, though she preferred to keep such talk quiet. The Apache were not enemies here, but tensions ran high in these parts, especially after recent conflicts with the cavalry. I am Maria, she replied simply. What healing do you seek? Nalnish looked toward the mountains, then back at her. Not for me. For my daughter. She is... He paused, searching for words. The sickness of the spirit. She does not speak, does not eat well. The medicine men have tried, but the darkness holds her. Maria's maternal instincts stirred immediately. She had raised 3 children of her own. Though they were grown and living in distant cities now, the pain in this father's voice was universal, crossing all boundaries of race and culture. Where is your daughter now? Maria asked, stepping down from the porch. She waits with my sister 2 days' ride from here. I came first to see if the stories are true. If you would help Apache, child. The honesty in his admission touched Maria deeply. She could imagine the internal struggle this proud warrior had faced, coming to ask for help from a white woman. The recent wars had created deep mistrust on both sides, yet here he stood, putting his daughter's welfare above all other considerations. Bring her here, Maria said without hesitation. I will do what I can. Nalnish studied her face for a long moment as if trying to read her soul. Whatever he saw there must have satisfied him because he nodded slowly. There is something else you should know, he said. My daughter is not... She is half white. Her mother was taken by soldiers when she was very young. Raised by them. When she returned to us as a woman, she was different, but she was still my heart. She died bringing our daughter into this world. Maria felt pieces of a larger story forming in her mind. The complexities of life on the frontier often created situations that defied simple understanding. Children caught between 2 worlds. Families torn apart by forces beyond their control. And healing that required more than just medicine. What is your daughter's name? Maria asked. Ayana. It means eternal blossom. But she has not bloomed for many moons now. The sadness came after her mother died, but it grew worse after... He hesitated. After what? After soldiers came to our camp last spring. They were looking for raiders, but we had done nothing wrong. They were rough with the children, separating families, asking questions. Ayana tried to hide, but they found her. They did not hurt her body, but something in their eyes, their words about her white blood. It frightened her deeply. Since then, she barely speaks. She jumps at sudden sounds. She trusts no one. Maria's heart ached for the child she had never met. She had seen similar reactions in adults who had experienced trauma, but in a child it was particularly heartbreaking. How old is she? 7 summers. She should be running, laughing, learning the old stories. Instead, she sits silent, staring at nothing. The desert sun was climbing higher, and Maria invited Nalnish to sit in the shade of her porch. She brought him water and some bread, noting how he ate gratefully but carefully, like someone accustomed to making provisions last. Tell me about her mother, Maria said gently. Nalnish's expression softened. Her name was Sarah originally. When she was 6, Apache raiders took her from a wagon train. This was during the bad times when both sides were fighting hard. She grew up with the Chiricahua, learned our ways, became truly one of us. By the time she was a woman, she could not remember her white family. He paused, sipping the water slowly. I loved her from the time we were both young. She was fierce, brave, beautiful. When we married, some of the old ones disapproved because of her white blood, but she proved herself many times over. She was more Apache than some who were born to the tribe. Maria could see the love and loss in his eyes as he spoke of his wife. And Ayana looks like her mother. Yes, light brown hair, green eyes like grass after rain. To look at her, you would think she was white. But her heart was Apache until... He trailed off. Until the soldiers made her feel ashamed of part of who she is, Maria finished quietly. Nalnish nodded. She began to ask questions I could not answer. Why did the soldiers speak to her differently? Why did they look at her with such anger when they realized she spoke Apache? Why did they call her Little Savage when she is more gentle than a dove? The trading post grew quiet except for the whisper of wind through the sagebrush. Maria understood now why this man had traveled so far to seek her help. His daughter needed healing that went beyond physical medicine. She needed someone who could help her navigate the complex world of being caught between 2 peoples, someone who could help her find her way back to wholeness. When will you bring her? Maria asked. If you truly mean your offer, I will leave tomorrow at dawn. We will return in 4 days. I mean it completely, Maria assured him. And Nalnish, when you come back, plan to stay for a while. True healing takes time. The Apache hunter stood, shouldering his rifle. I will bring gifts to trade. I do not ask for charity. We will work something out, Maria said. Your daughter's healing is what matters now. As she watched him disappear back into the desert shimmer, Maria felt a stirring in her heart that she had not experienced in years. Something told her this child's arrival would change everything.